and welcome to this episode of the Blog Chronicles. I am your host, Matthew Loomis. This show is sponsored by BuildYourOwnBlog.net, the full-service destination for people who want to start their own WordPress blog and achieve long-term success. Visit BuildYourOwnBlog.net to start your new blog today. My guest today has been helping businesses of all sizes create effective branding since 1987. She owns a branding and web design business called Big Brand System, and she has served as the Executive Vice President of Educational Content at Rainmaker Digital and was involved in every content decision you saw at copyblogger.com, which is one of the most respected content marketing sites in the world. And she has a new book out now that's a fabulous resource for all levels of online entrepreneurship. That's what we're going to be talking about today. From what I've read and heard from today's guest over the past couple of years, I know this interview is going to be quite helpful for you, the blogger. So let's get our chronicle on with Pamela Wilson. Hi, Pamela. Welcome to the show.
I am so happy to be here. I've been looking forward to this for weeks.
Yeah, congratulations on the recent publication of your first book. That's very exciting.
Thank you. Yeah, it has been exciting. It's been quite the process, but I've loved it, and I'm working on book 2. I liked book 1 so much.
Yeah, this first book is called Master Content Marketing, A Simple Strategy to Cure the Blank Page Blues and Attract a Profitable Audience. You know, I think finding solutions for writer's block and picking up new strategies for growing a profitable audience are topics on the minds of many bloggers, beginners to longtime bloggers, and I'm looking forward to talking with you about this subject, considering your expertise and experience.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited to share, and I have a feeling your audience will be interested in the process that I laid out.
Okay, cool. Well, let's dive right into it. Are you ready?
Yes. Let's do it.
Okay, so first of all, you and I know what content marketing is, but the new solopreneur, small business owner, or freelancer may not fully grasp what this marketing lingo really means. So I'd like to start by asking you to define the term content marketing.
So I have a feeling for most of the people listening to this, content marketing is going to be a lot like what they consider to be blogging. But it does have that word marketing in the name. So let's talk about what it is and also what it is replacing, basically. So marketing, the way it used to be done, was this somewhat intrusive and annoying process where you would send out these, what were basically advertising messages to an audience who did not ask for them, was feeling a little bit bombarded by them in their mailboxes, in their newspaper, on their radio, on the television. Marketing messages were coming at them from all corners. And what has changed is that now, with what we call content marketing, we're able to put out information that ends up attracting people to our businesses rather than just, kind of pushing out messages and wearing them down until they finally become our customers. So the difference is that content marketing comes from a place of serving the prospects who you eventually want to make your customers with helpful information, engaging information that builds trust in your business over time. Content marketing can be written. It can be a podcast. What you and I are doing right now is content marketing. It could be a video. The media itself does not matter. But the reason I wrote Master Content Marketing is that most content marketing starts out in written form. Even if it becomes a video down the line, it usually starts out as a written outline. So knowing how to structure that content so that it does the job it needs to do is super important.
Okay, I'm just curious, how do you distinguish blogging from content marketing?
I think within the blogging community, there is a certain sector who blogs out of passion. And then maybe on top of that, they turned it into something that becomes a business. So as an example, I was asked to attend the ProBlogger event in Australia by Darren Rouse of ProBlogger a couple of years ago. And what I saw in that community were a lot of people who had started blogs because they had a passion, and later on they figured out ways to monetize that blog. So that's definitely one approach. But once those bloggers got to a point that they wanted to monetize, I'm guessing that they shifted over to more of a content marketing model. The content marketing model really looks at a piece of content and says, how can I be helpful? But how can I be helpful in a way that will attract the prospects who I want to attract, and then move them to take some kind of action that will basically benefit my business, that will grow my business. Mm-hmm. So it's a slightly more deliberate approach to your writing than maybe straight out sort of passion blogging would be.
I see. Helpful and attractive. So why should a small business owner or freelancer consider content marketing as a strategy to generate more sales?
Content marketing works great because from the very beginning, when you are setting up what you're going to write, you're basically thinking about the effect that you want to have in the long term. So you are structuring your content so that you're delivering information, but you're also structuring it in a way that it's compelling and it will draw people in and then move them toward taking that action.
Okay. Why are you such a big proponent of content marketing over conventional advertising? I mean, it's still there, right? Conventional advertising.
Conventional advertising is still there, but what I have found with content marketing is it allows you to approach your relationship with your audience from a place of building trust and building kind of an ongoing, long-term, trust-based relationship. Just seems like better business to me. I think advertising, the attitude is more like, I'm going to go in and see how much I can extract from these people, right? Content marketing approaches the relationship as more of a long-term thing where you want to develop trust. You want to be a resource for those people. You want them to buy from you once, but then you want them to come back and buy from you again, and hopefully go out and advocate for your business. So it's less pushy, less intrusive, and more helpful.
Yeah, that sounds good. So, Pamela, what skills do you need to succeed at content marketing? I mean, are these skills that something you're born with, or how easy is it to get started in content marketing?
I actually do not think you have to be born with these skills, and I'm an example of someone who was not born with the writing gene, as I say in my book. I don't consider myself a natural born writer, but I became a writer by basically learning how to do it and then doing a lot of it. I'm self-taught, so I never went to school for writing, and it's not something I majored in college. I have a design background, so that was kind of my approach to marketing was always the visual approach. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the premise of my book is, look, you don't have to be a born writer in order to create content marketing. You have to be, what do you have to be? You have to be able to formulate your ideas using some kind of a process that makes them easy to understand, and that's what I laid out. You need to be persistent, so you need to do it over and over so that you get better at it. And you need to be willing to take a look at what's actually working and make adjustments. So you need to be flexible as well.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. For many who are just starting with business blogging, content marketing can look like an endless task, something that you have to feed time and energy into continuously. It feels like you just got a big dog and now you have to take care of it every single day for the next 15 years or so. So as a business coach, which is another part of your background, if you were working with someone who was dreading content marketing for their business, what would you say or do to change their mindset?
It's funny that you said the word mindset, because I do think that's where the whole thing starts. I think if you dial back to your mindset and think about how you might be able to approach this, not necessarily as a big fat to-do at the top of your to-do list, but rather something that you do that is a creative act. So it feels more like a creative process rather than just a big business to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the way to do that is to have sort of a process and a system where you have a bank of ideas that you pull from when it's time to create content. You have a process that you use that works very reliably for you. And that's really a matter of looking to see what time of day you feel most creative, what environment, like what physical environment you feel most creative in, and trying to reproduce those things every time you go to create content, because that sort of supports the process. And then approaching it, like I said, as a creative act. So most creators, just like most great athletes, have a warm-up period that they do before they get ready to create. They don't just sit down and look at that blank page and start sweating, right?
Mm-hmm.
They warm themselves up and ease themselves into it. And it's the same thing with content marketing. I mean, you really need to have a little bit of a warm-up, even if it's just 5 minutes, where you are just answering a random question, you're dumping thoughts that are rattling around in your brain, you are riffing on some kind of a writing prompt that you may have come across. You're just kind of getting your fingers moving and your creative mind woken up.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if we approach it that way, then it becomes something we kind of look forward to.
Yeah, it's good to know that there's not just one right way to do content marketing. It sounds like it's something you can adapt to your own personality, your own schedule.
I think it's really important to do that, actually. We're all different, and we all have different ways in which we work more effectively. And I think that when we get in touch with those ways and then we sort of honor our own needs and we set ourselves up so that we could be at our best, that's how we can get the most output out of our own creative brains, really.
Right. Now, many business owners are saying to themselves right now, Pamela, I don't have time to write and create blog posts. I know, as a freelancer back in the day when client work got hot and heavy, sometimes my blogging had to kind of be prioritized down the list a little bit. What do you say to solopreneurs who tell you, I don't have time for content marketing?
I hear that most often from people who think that they need to sit down. Well, from people who think they need a block of 4 to 5 hours to get a blog post written. And they think that they need to sit down and do it all in one session. And what I have found is, and it's interesting, part of the book I wrote has this section at the back where I talk to content marketers, well-known content marketers who are at the top of their fields. And I ask them a series of questions. And one of the questions was something like, what is one weird tip that you can pass along? And so many of them mentioned this same concept, which is content marketing works best when you do not try to produce a piece of content in one sitting. So in other words, you spread the work out over several days so that you have a chance to revisit it several times.
Yeah.
That's what I have found has worked best for me as well. And I actually kind of created a system. I call it the 4-day content creation system that I talk about in the book. It's basically taking the content creation process and breaking it down so that you can spread it out. And when you do it that way, it never feels overwhelming. That's the beauty of it.
Absolutely. Another process you describe in your new book, Master Content Marketing, is what you call the lazy approach to content marketing, which sounds so appealing.
I have to tell you, I almost named the book The Lazy Approach to Content Marketing, but it was a very polarizing title. So I actually tested that title, and a lot of people were like, I hate that word lazy. I would never aspire to be lazy. But honestly, between you and me, I think most of us aspire to be lazy in some level. So it's not that I think, what I did in the book is I took that word lazy and I replaced it with the word efficient. And honestly, I think that is what we are all really striving for, is how to work efficiently. But what I said in the book is that what we can do is look at the way lazy people do things and take our inspiration for efficiency from them. So
Right.
lazy people tend to find the easiest way of getting something done, and once they figure that out, they stick with that and they don't go off looking for new tools or new methods. They figure out what works, what takes the least amount of effort, and they just repeat the process every time.
And like you said in your book, they look like they're not working as much, but they're actually smarter and better than we are.
They're being more efficient. Yeah, they're
Right.
being more efficient. And that's the great thing. I mean, I don't know about you, but I have met so many people who have that shiny object syndrome problem where they see a new tool and they go off in pursuit of this new tool with this idea, oh, this new tool is going to change everything. And then they go through the whole learning curve of learning the new tool.
Right.
And in the end, they're producing the same amount that they were producing before, but they've wasted time learning a new tool. So what I recommend in the book is find what works for you and just do it the same way every time so that you can be efficient. And find the sort of the least number of steps that you can take between where you are now and where you want to be, and do it that way.
Absolutely. So, of course, if our content is going to work, it has to resonate with a target audience. Now, in chapter 4 of your book, this is all about how to do this. The chapter is called Matching Your Content to Your Customer Journey. What exactly is a customer journey, and why is matching our content to their journey so important to the success of our blog?
Mm-hmm. So think about a new prospect coming to your website for the first time. And maybe one of the reasons, let's use your site as an example, they land on your site because they've heard of this thing called blogging and they want to know more about it. So the first question that they have is what exactly is a blog? And I have met people who still don't really know what a blog is,
Right.
And I always end up telling them it's kind of like a magazine, but each page of the magazine is published on the web. It's a little hard to explain.
Yeah.
But typically those beginners have questions like that, like what is your topic? They're
Right.
trying to figure it out. And like I say in the book, I mean, a lot of people are doing those web searches because they have these questions that they would be embarrassed to say out loud,
Yeah, exactly.
So it's kind of this embarrassing question, what's a blog? They don't want to admit to someone that they don't know what a blog is. So they're on Google trying to find the answer there.
Right.
And they end up on your website. So having content for those people, for those beginners who are really at the very beginning of understanding your topic is super helpful because you're basically giving them a way to start a trust-based relationship with you. You're giving them content that meets their needs right where they are right then. So that's the beginner. That's the beginner on the content marketing journey. You have to create content for them. What tends to happen is that when people put together websites that are about specific topics, they become more knowledgeable about the topic because one of the best ways to become more knowledgeable about a topic is to teach it.
Yeah.
So over time, they start to become more knowledgeable. They create more content for more advanced users, and sometimes they forget about those beginners. So one of the things that I recommend is just make sure you are always serving up something for people who are really at the beginning of the process.
Right.
So that's the beginners, and it's probably the biggest group of the three groups that I talk about. The next group is intermediate, and the intermediate user or reader on this customer journey is they're at this point where they sort of understand what your topic is, but now they want to know how to do it. So they're saying things on your site. They're saying things like, okay, I get what blogging is. I know why it can be amazing for my business, but like, how do I do it? I don't know how to start. So they're at that point in the journey where they want to start using and really, putting into action this topic that you talk about.
Right.
And then you have the advanced reader, and that's someone who understands your topic, has started doing what you teach, but they really want to achieve mastery. So they really want to get good at it, like they know what blogging is, they've started to blog, but now maybe they're at a point that they want to start monetizing their website, or they want to, be considered a thought leader. So they want to take it to a completely different level. That's the advanced reader. Yeah. We really have to serve all three of these groups. They're at a different place in the journey, but we need to make sure that we have content for every one of them.
When you're serving those three groups, how do you know what percentage of your content should go to which one? You know what I mean?
Yes. It's going to be different for every website. That's really the final answer, but I usually just remind people that the largest group is likely your beginners. Not everyone who wants to know what blogging is, for example, is going to move to the place where they actually start blogging. There will be some drop off. So the intermediate group is going to be smaller. And then the people who get to the point that they really want to master your topic, and those people tend to be very good prospects for a paid product, for example. That group is going to be even smaller. So I can't give exact percentages because, like I said, it's going to be different for every website, but largest group is beginners, then the next smaller group is intermediate, and then the smallest group is advanced. So you have to have enough for all of them, and it's important, for example, if you write a fairly advanced post, it's important when you talk about specific topics that might be a little bit like jargon. In other words, vocabulary words that those beginning users don't understand. Right. It's important that you link back to that beginning content so that they can get up to speed and understand what you're writing about.
Pamela, do you think that those three groups can ebb and flow or grow and shrink back and forth over time as the business, goes on their journey?
I think there's a really good chance of that. Absolutely. And it's a good idea to do things like watch the comments that come in, talk to your audience, interact with them so you get a feel for who is really reading. And even occasional surveys. I have done focus groups, which really have just been a series of phone calls with a select group of readers, but it helps you to sort of take the temperature of who's reading at any given time.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Now, the majority of your book, Master Content Marketing, breaks down your 7 essential elements to successful content. Can you give us a rundown of these 7 elements and share a little bit about how each one contributes to a successful blog post?
I absolutely can. So what I want people to do is first, before we dive in, I want you to imagine a piece of content marketing. Imagine that you're looking at a piece of content marketing in front of you. So from top to bottom, what you are seeing is a headline, a first sentence, an introduction section, subheads, what I call the main copy, which is basically everything that's underneath those subheads, a summary, and a call to action. So that's what we're going to be talking about from top to bottom. So the first thing is the headline. That's at the very top. The headline is likely what people clicked on to get to your piece of content. So it's a very important element in your content marketing because it is like the little advertisement for your content that goes out in the world. So it's what you see on Twitter. It's what you see on Facebook. That headline is the main piece of information that people will absorb about your content before they click. It's what will
Mm-hmm.
help them make the decision whether or not they even want to click. So as they say in the book, you want to spend a lot of time on that headline, probably way more than you want to or think you need to spend. You need to spend on that
Mm-hmm.
headline.
Have you ever used the co-scheduler headline analyzer, or is it
Yes.
co-schedule? Excuse me. There's no R in the
Co-schedule.
end. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And when people sign up for the bonus content in my book, it's one of the things that I link to as a tool.
Hmm.
It's awesome. I what I have found with that headline analyzer, and I have mentioned it and recommended it lots of times,
Mm-hmm.
they give you very high points when you write a how-to headline. But, not
Yeah.
every headline can be a how-to headline.
I've
So
noticed that. Yeah.
I have really noticed that. And you can't make every headline how to do this, how to do that. What I think is really magical about that tool is they have managed to gamify the headline writing process. So
Mm-hmm.
you plug in these headlines, you check the score, and of course you want to bump up your score. So you write another headline and you write another headline. And that is actually the trick.
Mm-hmm.
You write a lot of headlines. You get the cliche, silly ones out of your head in the first 10 or 12,
Mm-hmm.
and then the really good ones start coming. So to me, the magical thing about that tool, which you can basically reproduce in a text document on your computer or with a piece of paper and a pen, it's this idea that you are just going to write a lot of headlines. You'll get the
Mm-hmm.
dumb ones out of the way first, and then the good ones will come. And that is really the secret to writing good headlines, just having a lot to choose from.
Mm-hmm.
I do share headline templates in the book, so I came up with 50 headline templates. And that can be a great way, if you are new to writing headlines, that's a great way to get started.
Okay.
Having these templates where you can kind of plug in your own information just gives you some practice in how great headlines are structured. I tend to not use templates at this point because I feel like my brain kind of thinks in the headlines,
Mm-hmm.
But at the very beginning, I did use them, and they can be very helpful. So I offered some in the book. I linked to some in the bonus content. Headlines are super important. And then I wrote this full chapter about one sentence, which is kind of
Hmm.
crazy, but I wrote a full chapter about the first sentence of your piece of content because I believe that first sentence has such an important job to do. People click on your headline, they go to
Mm-hmm.
your piece of content, and then they are hovering over the back button, deciding whether or not they want to read.
Mm-hmm.
And that first sentence is kind of a make or break moment. They are either going to continue and read on and absorb all of the content, or they're going to click away. So
Yeah.
um, the first sentence is super important, and there are some things you can do to get it written right. There are some techniques you can use to kind of draw people in and keep them on your page.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's that introduction section that happens right after the headline. If you have a content marketing or a content management system, rather, you likely have some kind of a more tag. So this is
Mm-hmm.
what goes after your introduction and before the rest of your piece of content. And oftentimes, if you have a blog homepage, everything before that more tag is what's displaying underneath your headline. So if somebody comes to your blog homepage, they might be seeing your headlines and a couple of paragraphs of introduction text, and they're deciding which of these pieces do I want to read.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it's kind of an advertisement for your post. It's a very important section. It's a section where people are still not fully committed to reading. So it's
Mm-hmm.
important to draw them in and keep them on the page and make some promises about what they'll get from spending time with your content. So the introduction section is also important.
I've always noticed that Copyblogger has a philosophy of that opening sentence to be pretty concise.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, can you talk a little bit about why you guys do that?
The thing about the opening sentence is you want your piece to seem like people will get a lot of bang for their buck So if they're going to spend 2 or 3 minutes reading your content, you want them to feel like, in those two or 3 minutes, you're going to get a lot of information.
Mm-hmm.
When you make a first sentence that is too long and too dense, what happens is people will look at it and think, "Ugh, I don't have time for this now. I'm just going to save it on a tab and I'll come back to it later." Right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you keep your first sentence concise, before they know it, they're reading the second sentence and then the third. So it's like a way of sort of opening the door and getting them to step inside and then stick around. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's good stuff. I feel like we could do a whole show on the first sentence.
Yeah. Well, I wrote a whole chapter. I knew at the time it seemed kind of ridiculous to write a chapter about a first sentence, but
no, for a geek like me, I love it. I think it's great.
Well, and that whole, those first three items, the headline, the first sentence, and the introduction,
mm-hmm.
the aim of all three of those elements is to keep people on the page. So they're super important.
So Pamela, on these 7 essential elements, do they have to be done in order?
You mean when you're writing them?
Yeah, when you're creating the content.
Yeah, I don't think so. In that 4-day content creation system that I shared, what I recommend is that people come up with what I call a working headline. So a headline that you think will work for your final piece, with the caveat that there's always a chance that that headline may change down the road because you may have a better idea, or by the time you finish writing, there may be something else that you decide to emphasize in the headline. So a working headline to start. And then I recommend actually that people work out their subheads as the next step. Because what happens, and the subheads are the fourth element of these 7 elements. So if you can work out your headline and your subheads, you have what I call a backbone. And you are able to hang the rest of your words on that backbone. So you have a basic structure for your post. You know what it's going to be about. You know what topic you're going to cover and the angle you're going to use, because that should all be in your headline. And then by writing out the subheads, you have sort of like signposts that are taking you through the content and are showing how you're going to develop the premise of the post or the argument of the post. You've worked out kind of step by step, okay, I'm going to talk about this first, and then I'll move on to this and this and this. That's what your subheads do. So I do recommend that if people have to choose, if they don't want to write from top to bottom, which most of us do not, that they focus on writing a headline and subheads first.
Good stuff. So much good material in your book. Now, if someone reads your book, Master Content Marketing, and then puts your tips into action and then keeps your book on hand as a guide, how quickly can they see improvements in their results?
It's funny that you say that, because that is exactly the effect I was hoping that book would have. I want it to be a guide that people use. People have already told me that they're keeping it on their desk and they're writing in the margins of the print version. And so that's very gratifying, because that's exactly, I wrote it so that you could flip to a section very easily and figure out, okay, what do I need to think about for my call to action? And you could just flip there and see the recommendations. But
right.
It all depends on how much time someone wants to spend on it. But honestly, I think if they read and absorb the information in the book, I think they could see results with the next piece of content they create. And
wow.
Oh, absolutely. Because there are a lot of tips in there that you can implement right away. And some of it is very simple stuff. It just takes a tiny bit of, it's not even necessarily more effort. It's just maybe a slightly different effort than what you've been doing. So yeah, I think they could see a difference right away. And then the more they implement over time, the more they practice, the better they'll get. So
Pamela, where can people get a copy of this book?
The best way to find the book is to go to mastercontentmarketing.com. There's a landing page there with links to I mean, you can get the book almost anywhere. So I have it set up so that you could walk into the independent bookstore on the corner and order a copy and they'll be able to get it. But you can get it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. I have an audio version of the book available. It's available on Kindle. The iBooks store has it for iPad. So however you like your books, you can get it in that format.
Sweet. There is a link in the show notes to mastercontentmarketing.com. And Pamela, where can people follow you on social media?
The best place to find me is on Twitter. They can find me at Pamela I. Wilson. I am probably more active on Twitter than I am on Facebook. I have an Instagram account. I can send that to you as well. That's a lot of fun too.
Yeah. Sounds good. The book is called Master Content Marketing, written by my guest, Pamela Wilson of Rainmaker Digital and copy blogger fame. It's a fantastic book and one that I'm going to be keeping at my side for a long time. So thank you so much, Pamela, for coming on the Blog Chronicles today.
Thank you. This was a lot of fun. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to your audience about this topic. I think it's a perfect match for the kinds of things I'm loving talking about right now.
I agree, and I can't wait to share it with them. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Blog Chronicles. If you enjoy the show, please subscribe on YouTube or iTunes and leave a rating or review to help other bloggers find us. If you want to chat, look me up on Twitter at Matt Loomis. So who is going to be my next guest on the Blog Chronicles? Next time I'll be meeting with another blogger on the air, and you will get to listen in on our strategy session as we plan and begin putting together a mega expert roundup post. You'll get to hear behind the curtain what goes on into creating an expert roundup post, how we do it, and more. My guest owns a Chicago-based lifestyle, food, and travel blog, and neither one of us have created a giant expert roundup post before. So you will get to go along on this journey with us, and I'm sure it's going to be a lot of fun and a great learning experience. So until next time, keep blogging.